Let's take a look at some skull villains of Bionicle G2. But let's see some of the ways that we could reimagine them and make them way cooler. I see a lot of love for the Bionicle G2 skull villains, but I also see a lot of hate for them as well. So let's see if we can fall in love with them again, or for the first time. And let's just get a bit of inspiration as well for any kind of like skeleton or skull related mocks that you might be working on. Let's go. We start off with Dylan Meaves. He has a revamp of Scorpio. I like this revamp. It's fun. There's not much happening, but I think that's good. There's something about this that just looks so clean, so smart, so stylish. It's such a good revamp. I think the original Scorpio was a fun build and a fun set, but there were a lot more colors on there than I remember there being, especially when we look at this revamped version here. And certainly on the tail of the original set, there's a lot more pieces being used, and I think that's because it had that play feature mechanism to it. But stripping that all away, taking out that trans orange and a fair bit of the black as well, and as well as removing the tail mechanism, suddenly now we've got a very tidied up version of this, and it's surprisingly way better. Because yeah, I don't know, I love the way the original Skull villains look, but this is just such a good improvement. You know, I also love the inclusion of the CCBS bones, they look like actual bones, so that the skeleton look is a lot more prominent on this version here. It's a good choice. Yeah, these minor changes, they just make this look so tidy and so sleek. There's also a version of this mock that adds a bunch more trans neon green, and this has been done so that that rare version of that Scorpio mask that does come in trans neon green, I believe it's a Comic-Con exclusive, very rare mask, so that can actually work on the body here, and just very effectively suddenly become its own sort of unique take on this villain using that mask. This is super cool. I always love seeing rare masks taken out of the glass display case and put onto an actual build, because it's not always common for people to have rare stuff, and when you can see people actually building with it, it's exciting, it's different, it's new, it's not something you see every day. So this is a really nice take, and that bold color scheme with a bunch of that trans neon green, really pretty. So lovely work. Now on to Painter Rex. He has revamped Skull Slicer. It's nice to see Skull Slicer on a much bigger scale. These big shoulder pads, as well as the lower camera angles when this has been photographed, suddenly now they have this really strong, like, Deathlord vibe. And again, I think that's a big surprise. You know, the original guy looked like a kind of dorky henchman villain set, but suddenly now they look like a final boss in a video game. They're suddenly like a real threat. That's cool. You know, maybe if you're not a big fan of these skull villains, you just got to make them bigger and accentuate some of the details, and suddenly they're going to look a little bit nicer. The leg design on this using the meltdown like radioactive canister pieces, that's a really nice way of continuing that extra little bit of trans bright green all throughout the body, because there's not too many of those pieces all throughout here other than on the torso, so I like that inclusion. Actually, those pieces are really cool. They work very nicely for a leg design. I wish they came in like black or silver or grey or something, just so you could, you know, have more uses for them outside of, you know, exclusively translucent colours, because it's a bit more limiting for certain mocks. But hey, maybe there's a bootleg piece out there that exists like that. That'd be pretty cool. But hey, this is a cool leg design and works very nicely for the colour scheme of this mock. Another thing that's cool is the use of some triaxle pieces to give the swords a more appropriate look. And, you know, the original weapons were just kind of purely one or two different pieces there, so extending it, giving it more of a pronounced hilt and stuff like that, very smart. Overall, this is a really fun reimagining of the character. I dig it. Now over to a mock by old mate Lewis Hammond, and this is a mod called Skull Warrior, obviously based off of the Skull Warrior set, but we're back on the anti-trans orange train here. You know, before with Skull Scorpio, we were talking about how no more trans orange doesn't work. Same with this one. But I kind of like it though. You know, once again, it feels a lot more clean and a lot more sleek. It's also good to see that they remove some of the larger armor pieces on one of the legs and one of the shoulders. The original set has that. This one doesn't. It's now a lot more symmetrical, and I don't know, again, it just works way better. It's strange, right? It feels weird that these little slight changes are having this much of an effect on the designs, but hey, it looks cool, that's all that matters. The knee pads on this are fun as well. It appears that they're connected with these classic T-bar pieces that appear on the very famous Hydraxon hand design to attach the fingers to a typical hand socket. And I like that. It gives us this nice pronounced knee, and it does look a lot like armor, which I think is sort of the vibe that they're going for here. It looks really, really good. The knee pad, I think, also helps to kind of create that transition between the skinnier upper leg and the bottom part of the leg into the boot and stuff there. It's nice. It's a good inclusion. And overall, it's a pretty simple technique, so it wouldn't be too hard to do yourself. On Flickr, I briefly mentioned at the start of the episode, this is a mod, so it's just some small modifications to the original set, but I like that, you know, if you've got a set or two lying around that you like, but there's a few things you don't like about it, put some little modifications to it, or maybe just make it symmetrical or asymmetrical, however you want to do it, very similar to this. You can just do some tiny things, but they make some pretty big, rewarding, nice end results. So something to consider. If you're not sure about what you're going to build next, but you want to build something, set modifications are a very good idea. Bob the Doctor 27 has now revamped Skull-Basher. Once again, a great example of a nice tidy up of an original set. Removing the play features this time and taking off those huge purple horns, I think was definitely the right play. Those exaggerated horns and the big weapons, they actually look a little bit more kind of comical and silly when we look at it here. So really toning that down suddenly makes this look way more menacing. Of course, both the set and this mock are very cool in their own right, but yeah, you know, there's many different ways you can approach a build, so always a good thing. Once again, we see some nice knee pads on this guy, but this time there's a hint of trans orange, which I like. Why are we removing all this trans orange, even though it works really well, as we've seen here? It's nice to see a hint of it remaining. It's a very tiny amount, of course, but good to see a little bit of love for some trans orange. But yeah, you know, that upper leg armor, of course, has that little bar clip at the end there. You just clip that trans orange clip on there and you get a nice little more pronounced knee, which is a really nice technique. Again, simple but super effective. Much like a fire type move on a grass type Pokemon. Very, very effective. Something else that's cool is the a few different shots here where they are holding and then wearing that dual molded gold mask. It's just nice to see that piece being used. I feel like it's a really underrated piece. Not many people play with it. So great to see it on this mock. It actually looks pretty good wearing it as well. So yeah, nice to see some love for that awesome piece. The next mock now is Skull-panzer, and this is built by Vio at Halkas. So now we move to a Skull villain that is not a revamp of an original set. This is just a cool dude that they made up, and I love that. Like I sort of said at the start of the episode, sure, revamps are cool, but you know what? Coming up with your own custom skull or skeleton-like villains, that's just as fun. So I love what they've done here to capture that skull aesthetic. The first thing that grabbed me, of course, was this ribcage design. None of the sets actually had any kinds of rib cages because they all had that printed torso piece. I think sometimes there was printing to imply a ribcage and stuff, but actually having a ribcage is a different story, so it's great to see that in action here. It works brilliantly. The weapons are also cool too. I like the fact that they have this like dynamic opening and closing effect here. I guess when they open up, they become like spinning blades for some sort of close range attack, or they kind of close up and become like guns, perhaps. I don't know what they physically do when they are using them as weapons, but they look super cool. And yeah, dynamic weapons that have some kind of feature, that's a smart move and just kind of fun to play with and fun to build. So if you can do something like that, give it a go. It looks really cool. Once again, no trans orange, this time just a lot of trans bright green and of course a bit of silver. So 2 colors, that's it. Hey, sometimes that's all you need and it looks fantastic here. So, you know, it's nice to have a mock with all sorts of crazy colors on it, but if you strip it back, it can still look just as good. So a lovely mock here. Let's move over to the next one. IGU has built Skull-blazer. Another custom skull villain this time, and this one is so cool. The idea of a skeleton with a mohawk and a flamethrower, that's just funny and really freaking awesome. The mohawk is a really nice design. It uses this fire piece that we can see on the wings of this Chima Ultra build set, so a really nice part choice there. It looks a lot like a mohawk, and it continues that fire aesthetic, which is quite key to this mock. We see another ribcage design here, which is great, but it's also combined with that printed torso piece. So before I was saying, well, the sets have printed torso pieces. The last mock we saw had the ribcage. Or you could have both. You don't have to pick and choose. I guess that's a good philosophy to take into your building as well. If you're looking at something and you're like, oh, I want to do this, but I could also do this, but I need to pick which one. I'm not sure which one looks good. Why not do both? The flamethrower design is also very cool. Nice to see a Ferno blade on the front there so you can stab people or flamethrower people. The pipe that kind of connects to the back and obviously powers the flamethrower there, that's nice. Just a big old pipe piece, but wrapping it around a bunch of tires as well. That's a smart choice. That would work just as well as just a pure pipe, but the inclusion of the tires really just cranks it up to 11. It's pretty cool. And of course, the flames all throughout the shoulders there. Love that inclusion. There's something about that looks very like death metal, rock and roll. It's just such a cool aesthetic and such a unique idea for a skull villain here. The execution of this is beautiful. So a lot of beautiful Skull-related villains today, whether they're revamps or original characters. Love how these all look. Hopefully your opinion on the Skull villains has changed. If it's still the same, that's fine as well, but maybe you're a little bit inspired for a future mock, whether it's Skull-related or not. Check the links in the description to see all the mocks that you saw today, so if you want to check out the images for yourself and zoom in and have a look at all the juicy details, you can do so. But also while you're there, be sure to check out the other work that these builders have done over on their Flickr accounts, because they post some super cool stuff, and it's worth checking out the other brilliant things that they build. In the description below is also links to my own social media, so you can see the builds that I'm posting over there and other stuff that I'm getting up to. And also in the description below is links to my Patreon and other stuff that I've got going on, so you can check that out. There's also the submission email. It's on your screen right now. It's also in the description below. If you want to submit your own mocks to the show, you can submit them through that submission email. Send them my way, and I'll do my best to put them in a future episode. We're coming up to episode 300, and that means another fan-submitted mocks episode. I'm going to do something special for episode 300. That's sort of 300th anniversary of episodes of BIS. But I probably won't do it anytime soon, because that unfortunately is getting super close to when I'm going to Brick Fair, Virginia. So I won't have time to execute what I want to execute, but know that something is coming. It'll be exciting. Can't tell you what it is yet, but stay tuned. And yes, you did hear that right. I will be at Brick Fair, Virginia 2023. So if you'll be there, come say hello. I will be at the Bionicle table, or I'll be at the Star Wars table, or I'll just be walking around the convention. But those are the two tables that you'll probably find me at. Come say hi. I'd love to hang out. Don't be shy. That's it. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Happy building, and bye for now.